This morning, are we headed for $6 a gallon gasoline? And will Congress ever pass a gas tax holiday? U.S. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm on that, and how President Biden's infrastructure law has sparked new investment in Texas. After dozens of migrants found dead in San Antonio, will anything shake Congress into considering a political solution for immigration? Lots to discuss with Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales, who represents a large swath of the Texas border. Abortion now illegal in our state, but district attorneys in some of the largest counties say they will take it one case at a time. Travis County DA Jose Garza on how he will decide what to prosecute and the legislative response he's bracing for. Plus, the U.S. Supreme Court rules in favor of President Biden, letting him end the Remain in Mexico program. But what will all of that mean for the November midterms?
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers across the state this holiday weekend. Let's start with some of the top political headlines across Texas. Abortions are continuing for now at a handful of Texas clinics. These procedures only go up to about 6 weeks in pregnancy. A judge in Houston approved this. She ruled that the old law Texas had in place is no longer enforceable. Pro-life supporters say this is likely to be overruled, though, by a higher court soon. State leaders have announced their first significant response to the Uvalde massacre. They set aside $105 million to help out. Almost half the money will buy bulletproof shields for school cops. The rest is for training and for mental health. But it's unclear whether any of that, though, would have prevented the mass murder at the Uvalde Elementary School. And Governor Greg Abbott's re-election campaign clearly rattled by some recent polls. Abbott now spending almost $20 million to reserve TV time and digital space. A recent poll showed Abbott's lead over Democrat Beto O'Rourke has shrunk from 15 points down to 5 points. It's uncertain when these ads will go live. This morning, we are beginning on the border. The U.S. Supreme Court said on Thursday that President Biden can now officially end the Remain in Mexico program. This will let migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. come into this country while their cases are being considered. But what will this look like in the coming weeks? Congressman Tony Gonzales is a Republican who represents a massive portion of the borderland. We spoke to him at his office in San Antonio. Congressman Gonzales, welcome back to the program. The U.S. Supreme Court the other day sided with President Biden and allowed him to get rid of the Remain in Mexico program. What do you expect that is going to mean to your district and to Texas as a whole?
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Jason. And regardless of how the Supreme Court rules, I think two things need to happen. One, the legislative branch needs to have a more long-term solution. We can't be hearing these court cases, have them swing one way or another. And two, the executive branch needs to implement policies that work. I've been urging the Biden administration, look, the Remain in Mexico policy worked. While it wasn't ideal, it worked. And we're at the height of this crisis. Some other programs that work is a PACER program and adding immigration judges to the equation. What needs to happen is folks need to get their asylum cases heard in days, not years. They need to have due process. But once their process is through, if they do not qualify for asylum, they need to return back to their country of origin. Last thing I'd say too is we need to work on work visas. There needs to be a legal route for people to come through. Right now, that program is completely broken. I wish the administration would dedicate some time and effort on that.
Congressman, more than 50 dead migrants there in San Antonio. We've seen tragedies like this during President Bush, President Obama, President Trump, and now President Biden. Do you expect Congress is going to address this in any way legislatively?
You know, we've seen things happen in the past, Jason. We've never seen anything like this. This is the worst crisis. This is the single worst incident in history. And, you know, I was told that there were other people in that train or in that truck besides the people that were left behind. So there were many that escaped or fled once those doors were open. What I'm getting at is this is happening nonstop. But if we don't take notice to 53 innocent migrants dying, then when are we going to take notice to it? Many of these people are coming for a better life for themselves and their families. And we need to provide them an opportunity to live that American dream, not die on the route to the American dream.
You mentioned work visas as well, too. Is there support on the Republican side to back something like that?
I think there's like right now, everybody is paying attention to the border and everybody wants the border to be secure. They have different ideas on how to get there. I represent 42% of the border. So I think you can have both. I think you can have both a strong border security package and an immigration reform package that welcomes those that want to come and work and live the American dream. Now, you can't start with amnesty and you can't start with the wall. I mean, that immediately tanks any kind of package. I think you start with work visas and you build out from there. You start with expanding technology at the border. You know, these are things that could have prevented what happened in San Antonio, these 53 people from dying. If there was technology at the border that could have scanned these trucks, they would have been identified and it would have stopped there.
Congressman, you supported that bipartisan bill on gun violence. Senator Cornyn, who helped organize it on the GOP side in the Senate, he was booed at the state GOP convention in Houston last month. What kind of reaction have you had from your constituents?
You know, I've kept my constituents involved every step of the way. I've got several gun manufacturers in my district. I got a lot of FFLs and gun enthusiasts, and I've kept them involved every step of the way because I've been very conservative on the Constitution and ensuring that folks never have their constitutional rights infringed upon and have due process. And I wanted to make sure my people, as this piece of legislation was getting built out, if there was a point which they told me, hey, Tony, this is going to infringe upon our rights. You know, it has a lot of good stuff in there, but it's going to infringe upon our rights. I would have voted no. At no time did I get that. So that's been my approach, and I lean into it. At the end of the day, I represent my district. And I have what do my people want? And I'd say, you know, we believe in firearms. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in the Second Amendment. But there's no reason why this person should have had access to that firearm, not because he was 18, not because it was an AR, because he was mentally unstable.
Congressman, thanks for being on the program with us.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate the time.
Let's stay on the border for a moment here. Texas could soon see an influx of migrants seeking asylum over the Remain in Mexico policy. You know, Thursday, the Supreme Court, as we mentioned, said President Biden could end that policy. Justices said federal immigration law gives discretion to the president on this issue. But what exactly does that mean for Texas? Ian Mitra is the senior managing editor of the Texas Tribune. Ian, good to see you again. What do you expect to happen next in this case?
Well, in this case, it seems like, you know, there's still going to be legal battles along this front. Although the Supreme Court has weighed in on the Remain in Mexico policy, Attorney General Ken Paxton of the state of Texas has said that, you know, the legal battles are going to continue. They have several other cases related to immigration. So, you know, he's going to fight on that front. But in terms of this, the Biden administration has not said specifically when they're going to pull back on the Remain in Mexico policy. Yeah. And so I think it remains to be seen, but it's, you know, obviously it's the administration's tried to do that before. So it's just, there's going to be a matter of, you know, addressing the cases when asylum seekers are getting their cases processed.
I want to ask you briefly about the 53 migrants found dead in San Antonio. Governor Greg Abbott used this as an easy option to go after President Biden, blaming him. But remember, Governor Abbott and the state spend $1 billion a year down there with state troopers. Why didn't troopers catch any of this?
This is what immigration analysts have just talked about in terms of like the difficulty of this situation, because of smuggling operations and how strong they are. And so it's just impossible to catch. You know, obviously, you know, Governor Abbott had set up checkpoints earlier this year, and the state has again said they'll do checkpoints in a different area. And even with this type of surveillance and monitoring, it's just hard because of the numbers of people that we're talking about.
And the vast amount of territory as well. Ian, back to you.
That's right.
Thank you very much. Coming up, district attorneys in the state's largest counties say they will consider prosecuting abortions case by case. So what factors will they weigh before pressing charges? We will ask Jose Garza, the DA of Travis County. And are we headed for $6 a gallon gasoline? Electric car sales up this summer, Texas benefiting from it all. U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm joins us from Washington in a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. A question this morning that many are asking: how likely is it that anyone will actually be prosecuted for abortion in this state? District attorneys in some of Texas's largest counties say they're going to take these case by case. From Austin this morning, the Travis County DA Jose Garza on how his office will determine what to prosecute and which cases to dismiss. Mr. Garza, welcome to the program. You've said, like some of your colleagues across the state, that you would consider any abortion cases that are presented to your office on a case-by-case basis. What exactly, though, are you going to weigh in deciding whether to prosecute?
Well, I want to be very clear that the Supreme Court decision that overturns Roe and the decision of our state legislature to criminalize people who seek or provide abortions will make our community less safe. It will undermine the public safety of our community. And so I think it's really important to be clear with our community here in Travis County that we will not be prosecuting those cases.
To make sure I'm clear, is your office not going to prosecute any abortion cases that come into your office, or are you going to consider these case by case?
Our office will not be prosecuting women who seek abortions, and we will not be prosecuting people who are legitimately attempting to provide abortion services.
Have you spoken to police chiefs at all in Travis County, and do you expect that they might bring any cases to you?
Well, what I can tell you, yes, I have spoken with law enforcement leadership here in Travis County. I think, generally speaking, our community is in agreement that the decision to overturn Roe is dangerous for our public safety, that laws that criminalize personal health care decisions are dangerous for our public safety. And we will be working together over the course of the coming weeks and months to ensure that that we have a plan here in Travis County to keep our community safe.
Mr. Garza, you're from Texas, I believe.
I
You
am.
know the current politics there in your city in Austin and what things are like with the Republican legislature there. I can't imagine, just knowing the politics in this state, that the Republicans are going to let this slide in the largest metropolitan areas where the population centers are. Is there any concern from you and your colleagues about blowback from the legislature?
Well, you know, what we know, Jason, is that over 75% of the state's population live in Dallas, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. And I think there is deep concern on the part of the legislature that they are increasingly out of touch with the overwhelming majority of people who live in our state. You know, it took an enormous amount of suffering and struggle for women in the United States and women in the state of Texas to win the right to have control over their own personal health decisions. It is clear that it's going to take an enormous amount of struggle to win that right back. And I think that the people who live not just in our community, but all across the state are ready to take that fight on. And I think the legislature and the governor are worried about that.
Mr. Garza, we appreciate the time, sir.
Thank you.
Lots of people on the roads this holiday weekend, and some experts already predicting we could see $6 a gallon gasoline on average by Labor Day. All of this is driving some people into electric vehicles, and it's also sparking new investment in Texas. The German company called Siemens is expanding its plant in Grand Prairie to build more chargers for those electric vehicles. We discussed all of this with the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm. Madam Secretary, welcome to the program. 7 months after the infrastructure bill was passed and signed into law, we're now seeing private investment in electric cars and charging stations in Texas and across the country as well, too. I'm curious how you think this state, Texas, the largest energy producer in the country, how it stands to benefit.
Oh, my goodness, in so many ways from that bipartisan infrastructure law. But if you just look at charging stations, for example, I mean, Texas is obviously very large. There's a lot of areas of Texas along the corridors, the transportation corridors that don't have charging. And so Texas is going to get a significant amount of money for charging stations to be able to fill in the gaps where the private sector is not, where it's not working for them.
Well, we've had your colleague, the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, on our program before, and talking about the infrastructure bill, how Texas would stand to gain more than any other state in the country as far as these network of charging stations every 50 miles or so, but just because we have so many roadways here. But experts have told us the Texas grid is not yet ready to handle everyone who wants to plug in their electric vehicle. How concerned are you that Texas's infrastructure might delay this rollout?
Well, I do think that it's not just Texas. Every state is going through the same assessment, and that, it's not a light switch that you flip on, right? It is going to happen over time. But ERCOT and the Texas grid, they have to evaluate what they see as demand. In many cases, in a lot of utilities are seeing the electrification of the vehicles as an opportunity to provide resilience to the grid, because what you're doing, of course, is adding batteries and energy storage onto the grid as well as using the grid when you're charging. So if you can sell electrons back and forth from the grid using those batteries, that's a huge opportunity. In fact, Tesla, which just moved to Texas,
Right,
has a deal now with PG&E in California to do just that, to create a virtual electric grid, which will provide resiliency and redundancy to be able to allow for more charging to happen.
Before we let you go, I want to ask about gas prices. Do you expect we'll see $6 a gallon gas prices on average this year?
I don't think so this year. Let me tell you why. The Energy Information Administration, which is an objective entity that evaluates and projects what the cost of gas will be, says, now again, all caveats, because oil is traded on a global market and anything can happen, right, on a global market. But if things go as they are, they're projecting that the price on average across the country of gasoline will be about $4.37 by the end of the third quarter. Now, we are going to see some continued upward pressure during the driving season. This is why the president has called for Congress to have a gas tax holiday during the summer. It's why he's calling for states to do the same, to remove the gas tax so that people can drive without it. It's still going to be high, no doubt about it, but we want to do everything we possibly can to even it out, even as we know global events are impacting the upward pressure on prices.
We're almost out of time, but I'm curious about the gas tax holiday. We've seen the headlines, but is that actually going to happen? Do you think there are votes to actually make this happen?
Well, there are a lot of votes. The question is there a majority of votes? And, when the president called for this, he noted that there are a number of Democrats and Republicans who have called for this in the past when the price wasn't as high as it is right now. So we're hopeful. I know that the teams are working. I hope that partisan issues won't prevent people from voting for something that would relieve people's pain at the pump.
Madam Secretary, thank you for the time.
You bet. Thank you.
Coming up, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz took on Sesame Street last week. Is he raising his national profile for 2024 or chasing a tangent? The Roundtable ready for that question in just a moment. Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. I am Mitra is back with us from Austin at the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy is here each week from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Bernadine Steptoe joins us for this segment. She is the political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Ian, let's start with you. And President Trump, his support has kind of been questioned and eroding among some Republicans nationwide. We've seen some of his candidates not doing too well. As we go into the November midterms, is he a help or a hurt to Texas Republicans?
Well, we should also just remember, too, that, there was a convention straw poll at the state party convention. And, when they took a poll for potential presidential candidates, Donald Trump was still at the top of that list with more than 50%. So it's very clear, if you're looking at the numbers, that he still holds some sway, even though some of his endorsements haven't worked out the same way. But it's hard to see that kind of ebbing too much with those types of popularity numbers.
But why haven't his endorsements worked out in some races across the country?
Well, yeah, I think that Trump is popular, maybe at the Texas Republican Convention, but not as popular among mainstream general election voters, maybe not even in Texas. He may have lost a couple of points in popularity in Texas. I don't think Texas candidates will be as quick to brag about his endorsements in the fall. The particular problem is with candidates who may have supported his claims that elections are a fraud. And I think that those candidates are the ones that have really been hurt. The Republicans are running away from him. They don't want him to be the nominee again. You can see the way the money's going because they're afraid he'll lose again if he's nominated.
Bernadine, what do you make of this?
Well, what you see even nationwide is Republicans want to move away from the 2020 election. And that is what Trump is talking about. And Trump wants to litigate. He wants to be at the top of the ticket. And a lot of the Republican voters are just, quite frankly, tired of it. They want to move forward and look at the future and not necessarily looking at the past. And so that's why you see some of those candidates are losing and you see some of his support. But I do agree that he is still popular in Texas, but you just have Republicans who want to move forward.
But I want to switch off to Senator Ted Cruz. He tangled with Sesame Street again. Is this all about 2024 staying in the headlines, or is this something else?
You know, when you read that he's fussing with Elmo over vaccines, and this is a couple of years after he took on Big Bird, it makes me wonder if Ted Cruz wants to be president or wants to be on Sesame Street. He seems to just want to continue to make headlines everywhere. I guess next he'll be challenging Elmo to a basketball game.
Bernadine, what do you make of this?
Well, keep in mind, his supporters, those grassroots Republicans, love culture wars. And that's what he's doing. And vaccines, they're political. And as long as he can fight Sesame Street, and then also remember, he's not doing as well in the polls when you look at the presidential polls. The Florida governor is doing better than he is. So he needs to look at what does well with his base, which is fighting those cultural wars. And Sesame Street happens to be in the limelight now.
And in the crosshairs too, Ayad. I mean, what does he get out of this?
Well, look, I mean, everything seems to be around the framework of the next presidential election. And of course, you know, the headlines are dominated primarily by Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. So I think anyone is going to be trying to find ways to kind of get their name out there. And it's just, you know, of course, everything is, you know, everything points back to the presidential election because all of these folks have some ambitions. And so, you know, it's hard to kind of separate those.
All right, guys, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics. Hope you can join us in. Until we see you, enjoy the 4th of July holiday weekend.